We're feeling a little spooky here at JSW because it is Halloween time here at JSW. Thank you for tuning into another episode here on WCTV. I'm your host today, Caleb Yauger, and alongside me hosting as well, Meg Berry. Thank you so much for joining us on the desk today, Meg. We got a lot of sports to talk about. The fall sports seasons are wrapping up, and we're moving right into the winter sports seasons, so let's get right into it. Men's and women's soccer ended the season last Wednesday against Geneva in a doubleheader. The men's team lost that game 3-0, but the women's team ended on a victory 2-1, but both teams did end under 500, Meg. For the men, 3-9-5 overall, 1-6-3 in conference play, and for the women, 5-7-5, 2-4-4 in conference play.
Yeah, it wasn't the best season, I think, for both men's and women's soccer. Definitely not what they expected. The men finished 10th overall in the conference, and the women's finished 8th. Not the best season, especially after the women's coming off of a playoff run last year. There's definitely some things that need shifted around. And as for the men's soccer team, they're a relatively young team. So I definitely have some hope for them moving into the future. They have some time to grow and just get better.
Yeah, Sam Hawkins was the only senior for the Waynesburg men's soccer team. They ended the season, though, on a 6-game losing streak, and within that 6-game stretch, they were only able to score 1 goal. So from now on, it's probably just looking forward to next season. And speaking of which, for volleyball, they finished the season at 3-22. They only won one conference game out of 10 total, went 1-9 in conference play. They lost to Grove City 3-0 at the Rudy Marisa Fieldhouse. They are losing a couple seniors in Kayla Stohan, Alexis Marsh, and Macy Hodem.
Yeah, I'm not really quite sure what's going on with this volleyball team here. I definitely had hope for them coming into the season. They started off really well with non-conference games and just scrimmages and things as such in the beginning of the season. And I definitely think they have some room to grow. They had a lot of freshmen start this year on top of that. So they are a young team. And like you said before, it's just looking forward to the next season and just hoping to do better next year. Men's
and women's cross country participated in the PAC championships this past Saturday. For the men's team, they placed 7th in the field, and for the women, they placed 6th. But they still have one more competition at the NCAA Mid-Atlantic Regional Championships on Saturday, November 12th. Football is still going on. They took on Westminster College this past Saturday at John F. Wiley Stadium. They lost that game 30-10. A little bit of a lackluster offense for Waynesburg, to say the least, on Saturday.
Yeah, it was definitely a weird game for them. Coming off of 2 road victories, definitely you expected them to have a better offensive game, especially Hunter Cameron against Bethany had 191 yards. So you just expected the team to just overall offensively do better. But at the end of the first half, Hunter Cameron had 3 rushing yards and Justin Flack had 24. And I said that correctly, at the end of the first half. So the offensive game just was not there this weekend. And in order for them to succeed against these next 2 games, St. Vincent and W&J, really, really tough components, the offense needs to be there.
And see, the thing is, Waynesburg went up 3-0 to start the contest, but Westminster answered with 27 unanswered points. And the total offense for Westminster was much better than Waynesburg's, 431 yards versus 222 yards. And a big reason was because of one of the best rushers in the PAC for the Titans, Ryan Gomes, 19 carries for 175 yards, just ran all over the Waynesburg defense. Going over to wrestling, the Orange and Black wrestle-offs took place last week. Black won over Orange 29-6. A couple of key guys that stuck out. Freshman Ryan Batcher went 2-0 on the season. Harley Constable on the night, Harley Constable went 2-0 on the night as well. The Ned McGinley Invitational is up next for the Waynesburg University wrestling team, and that happens this Saturday at 10 a.m. But Meg, we are heading also into men's and women's basketball season. Let's start with the men's basketball team. Finished 14-14 overall last season, but it was one of the better seasons that this Waynesburg team has had in a long time.
And I am excited for basketball. We are a basketball school, and I think the men are going to do 10 times better this year than they did last year. They brought in a lot of freshmen this year and a lot of talented freshmen, may I add. But then on top of that, we have returners coming back that have just carried the team last year. Matt Popek, Ryan Feldberg, and Antoine Baker, people of that such, they have that talent, they have that connection, and I think with these new freshmen that have come up, it's really going to be a really good year for this men's basketball team.
And last year, this men's basketball team was one of the best scoring defenses, not just in the PAC, but in the country, constantly being ranked in the top 25. And this year, they have some new additions, like Megan said, 15 freshmen, if you count them up on the roster, and they have this guy named Trevor Button. We might be able to look forward to him as well. He was third in the nation in his senior year for scoring 32.4 points a game, plus he scored over 1,300 points in his career. Size might be a concern this year, although they did lose Najon Kirkman. He was huge for this Yellow Jacket team last year.
Yeah, we definitely don't have a lot of the tall players anymore, but it's okay. I think with some of the freshmen that have come up and just the skill, the true skill that they have, if they put that together and have some type of communication and connection on the court, I think they will have a really successful season.
On the other side for women's basketball, looking for a little bit of a turnaround. 6-20 overall, 5-13 in conference play last season. They are losing Brooke Fuller, but they also have a lot of freshmen that they added to the roster, and they're adding 3,000-point scorers to the roster this season.
Yeah, and that right there, that statistic is very, very promising. You have these shooters, and that's what you need. You need to put more points on the board, and last year that is something that the women's team struggled with. But with that, I feel like it's a boost of confidence, and I feel like it's a very, very good start to the season.
Only one senior this year on the roster is Anika Dansby, but that's all the time we have for this segment. We've only scratched the surface. We're going to get more in-depth right here on Jacket Sports Weekly, so don't go anywhere.
You're watching WCTV, where we aim to bring you the best local coverage of what you care about most. Everything from local businesses to hometown sports and the latest weather. We're keeping up to date with what you need to know about issues that affect our campus and our community. We're telling the stories that matter, celebrating our past, our future, and our potential. So tune in for all the latest buzz right here on WCTV Channel 14, Waynesburg.
You're watching Jacket Sports Weekly right here on WCTV. We're going to talk about football next year on JSW, and here to talk all about it is our analyst, Logan Lepiscopo. Logan, there was a lot of talk before this game on Saturday about how important this matchup was for Waynesburg to win. Waynesburg did get on the board first, but it was Westminster that really just dominated the entire contest.
Yeah, I personally was not here to watch live in person, but from watching the Woosen production, I could tell that something was just different about Waynesburg playing Westminster. Historically, Waynesburg has always played Westminster kind of bad, but this offensive performance was just out of the ordinary because the running game wasn't going. 1.7 yards per carry, that's just not something we've seen so far this season for Waynesburg. And then the defense, it seemed like they couldn't really make a stop. 7 pass breakups, there were 3 sacks collectively by the team, but ultimately, it seemed like the running game for Westminster was the key to winning the game.
And you said the running game for Waynesburg just was not there. What does this team have to do to get that running game back on track? Hunter Cameron and Justin Flack usually both average 5 yards per carry, and that just was not there at all this week. So what needs to happen to win these next 2 games?
I think to win these next 2 games, and like you said, it's important to get this win, but now the next 2 are very vital to potentially gain into a playoff spot. The offensive line needs to be able to obviously block better, open up some more holes for Flack and Hunter Cameron. They can't do it all themselves. But also, the passing game needs to continue to be an important part of the offense because you cannot be a one-dimensional offense. We've seen with Geneva, yes, sometimes they have success with their triple option scheme, but at the end of the day, if it's anticipated over and over again, it's just going to continue to eventually be found out and fail. So Waynesburg needs to be able to pass the ball as well as run the football effectively.
Were there any positives from Saturday in your eyes?
I would say there were some positive sides to the game, but more on the defensive side. I will give props to Dakota Romantino. He had a few good plays here and there. He did have that one drop that led to an interception, but those type of plays happen. I talked about the defense. They had some good plays, 7 pass breakups, 3 sacks. It just seemed like nobody could ever clog those holes for the running game. I mean, Westminster ran all over Waynesburg. Gomes had 175 net rushing yards. Waynesburg's given up a ton of rushing yards so far this season, and it continued against Westminster, and Gomes showed why he is the leading rusher in the PAC.
And Tyler Raines got taken out at the end of the game, and Thomas Burke got put in. Is Tommy the future for Waynesburg football?
I'm going to say for future that Burke is going to be that guy because Tyler Raines, yes, he's a senior. Expectations is that he's done after this year at Waynesburg. I think Thomas Burke is definitely going to be the next guy up, and he's going to be very successful, as well as the rest of the team is going to be successful. This is already a huge step up from last year as a team overall, going to 4-4 on the season now. I don't think anybody really expected Waynesburg to be at this position, but Burke is going to have a great career here at Waynesburg so long as the coaching staff continues to trust him. And yes, Tyler Raines wasn't really working out in the passing game this game, but Burke came in, that drive he got, touchdown to Keandre Hollis, it showed that he has potential to take over that starting job in the future.
This Saturday, Waynesburg takes on St. Vincent College in another PAC matchup. This is the second to last game of the season. Both teams are 3-3 in conference play, so to say that this game is important is an understatement. Key to the game for you, Logan.
I think it's obvious. We've seen it in the Westminster game. Stop the run. There has to be some type of way that the defensive line and the linebackers of Waynesburg can make those crucial stops and plug the holes so St. Vincent doesn't run the ball all over them. As well, keep Hunter Cameron and Justin Flatt going. Obviously, this week was very unsuccessful running the football, but you can't just shy away from that and not lean on those guys to continue to be successful. They're going to be good. They're going to make big plays. Waynesburg just has to trust them moving into these last two games.
And by the way, that game starts at 1:00 p.m. Now, for the first time this year on JSW, we're going to be talking about men's basketball when we return on Jacket Sports Weekly.
Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly. It is basketball season, and we are going to be talking about men's basketball. And here with us is Joe Veneziale to give us the whole rundown on the men's basketball team.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm very excited for this season. But just starting off, last season, like Caleb said in the opening, it's one of the best seasons that Waynesburg's had in recent tenure, going 14-14, 500 overall, and making the EEAC tournament, I should say, for the championship. Unfortunately, losing to Juniata College 55-45. But nonetheless, all of the leaders that have been on this team for the past 4 years are back this year, in my opinion. Of course, number 5, Matt Popek, obviously coming into his 6th year, have a great tenure here at Waynesburg and in high school. I just believe he's going to lead this team to great things.
And looking at the season going into 2022-2023, last season they were one of the best scoring defenses in the entire country in Division III. I mean, you have games that they would not allow opponents to score more than 65 or even 70 points, 60-59, 66-61, those types of scores. What are some of the key components for that kind of defense heading into this next season?
Absolutely, Caleb, and especially, overall being number one scoring the number one scoring defense in the PAC. But that's just all on Tim Fusino, the head coach of this men's basketball team. He is very strong-minded on his defense, and it shows. Obviously, we are the number one scoring defense in the PAC as of last year, but nonetheless, I believe it's him with the scheme that he runs and the players that do a great job at it. Bryson Wilt, Jansen Knotts, Jake Sight, all coming down the court and making the shots that they need to in this transition, I should say. They're one of the best teams in the PAC and in the nation when you said that. So it's just going to keep happening this year, and I believe it's just going to keep moving forward.
So the defense is still going to be there this year, and the offense, obviously, need to score points to win the games. So let's talk about some of these freshmen that we have. So, Joe, what is your opinion on Trevor Button?
Trevor Button, I mean, number 3 in the nation in scoring in high school, and he comes to Waynesburg University. I mean, how about it? not a more exciting time in Waynesburg University basketball. I mean, we've had a great season coming off this season, obviously, but nonetheless, we get this star power coming into this school with all this momentum. I believe it's a great acquisition for this team, and like you guys said before, 15 seniors of that, obviously with Trevor Button, with all of this depth, I have great future. I think we have a great future for this men's basketball team.
Last season, Waynesburg beat Geneva in the first round of the PAC playoffs. It was their first playoff win in 7 years, and they unfortunately lost to W&J in the semifinals in the PAC tournament. One of those big contributors was Najon Kirkman. We were just talking about additions with this freshman class, but they're losing a huge contributor in Najon Kirkman. How much is that going to impact them this year, and especially in terms of size?
Huge. I mean, he was the number 2 rebounder in the PAC nonetheless in the Najon Kirkman. But I don't think it's as bad as we look at it to be. But, I mean, it's going to be bad. Obviously, we do not have the size of Najon Kirkman at the center position. But nonetheless, as I said these names before, Bryson Will, Jansen Notch, Jake Scheidt, all of Anton Baker, mind you, can grab rebounds like no other. So I don't believe it's going to be that much of a shattering position. But nonetheless, without our Big Five, it is going to be tough against these tougher teams. And you bring up a great team in Geneva. I have them, Grove City, and W&J circled on my paper because those are the 3 top dogs in the PAC as of right now. As Chatham is in there as well, but those were the 3 teams that gave us problems last year.
So how are the men's team this year going to be able to move past the fact that they don't have the height and, like you said, win against these big teams that they unfortunately lost to last season?
I mean, honestly, it's depth. I mean, we hold teams to under 10 points. I mean, I look back at it, 60-59 against Geneva, away at Geneva, mind you, 66-61 against W&J, away at W&J. It's just a matter of winning the game. We have to finish out the game, no matter the size, the rebounds, the points. Obviously, we are the number 1 scoring defense in the PAC as of last year. But nonetheless, we have to come up big time in these game time winning scenarios. We got to beat these teams.
Well, that's all we have for men's basketball. Thank you, Joe. When we come back, we're going to be talking about women's basketball and heading into the next season.
You're watching WCTV, where we aim to bring you the best local coverage of what you care about most. Everything from local businesses to hometown sports and the latest weather. We're keeping up to date with what you need to know about issues that affect our campus and our community. We're telling the stories that matter, celebrating our past, our future, and our potential. So tune in for all the latest buzz right here on WCTV Channel 14, Waynesburg.
The Waynesburg women's basketball team finished 6-20 last year overall, 5-13 in conference play, but they have some hope this year in a big recruiting class. Brock Owens is here to talk about the women's basketball team, and Brock, 3 of those freshmen are 1,000-point scorers in high school. Clara Paige Miller from Waynesburg Central, Emma Cito from Brownsville, and Olivia Ammons, the all-time leading scorer in Clay Battel's history. Just talk about this roster in general, especially it being so young this year.
Yeah, there's a lot of newcomers in this year's. 9 of the 14 players on this roster are incoming freshmen, Caleb. So there's a lot of youth on this team, but as you said, there's a lot of talent, especially scoring. They brought in some good scorers, 3 1,000-point scorers, and the other players can definitely get it done as well. So it's not like, yeah, they have a young roster, but they do have a solid roster that can win some games this year.
So last year we lost Brooke Fuller. Huge impact to the women's team. How are they going to be able to make up for that loss this year? What are they going to need to do with this youth and even with the returning players that we have?
Yeah, talking about 1,000-point scorers, Brooke Fuller was one here at Waynesburg University. Last year, she led the Waynesburg roster in scoring with 16.4 points per game, led in rebounds with 10.6 points or rebounds per game, led in blocks with over 1 block per game. So obviously a big loss. She was the best player on this team. But one of the things that Sam Jones did a lot of with recruiting these freshmen is get some people that can play down low a little more. 5 of the 9 freshmen on this roster are 5'8" plus and play either forward or the center position. So they're going to be able to put some of these younger players down low and try to replace Brooke Fuller, even though it's going to be difficult to fully replace her.
And there's only one senior on this roster this year in Anika Dansby. Just talk about the pressure that's going to be on her shoulders, unfortunately, and how much she's going to have to lead the charge as being the point guard on this team.
Yeah, like you said, she's the point guard on this team. So even though she is the senior, I think she's felt the pressure for the last couple of years because she's really been the point guard ever since she got here, really. So she's really experienced in that area, and she's going to be able to just continue to play her game. She's a fighter down low. She was the second leading rebounder on this roster last year, and she's not very big. So, yeah, she's a very good, just high-energy player. She led the team in assists and one of the top in the PAC as well with 4 assists per game last year. She's just a very solid player, a good leader, and her being the only senior, I think a lot of the girls are going to buy into this type of thing because she is going to be a good leader as a senior, I think.
Well, I completely agree with you. She has been a great point guard ever since she got here. But on top of that, with that young team and Anika returning and some of the other returners like Marley Wolf and Aubrey, what is the key this year?
I think like you said, a couple of those returners like Marley Wolf and Avery Robinson, they need to be able to step up in their own right. They were 2 of the better scorers on the team last year. Behind Brooke, they were 2 and 3 as far as points per game. Avery was number 2. She had 10.9 points per game. Marley had 8.4 points per game. So if they're able to really get it going, and those 2 were kind of streaky. I think if those 2 can play at a consistent level, at one that we know they're capable of playing of. They have had very big games, both of them, especially Avery Robinson. When she gets hot behind the three-point line, she's one of the best players in the entire conference. And Marley Wolf can go on very good hot streaks as well. So if those 2 can kind of level out their playing field and play at a good, consistent level, along with the young talent on this team, I think that they have a shot to be able to start winning some games and, maybe compete a little bit in this conference.
What is going to be the biggest area of focus on the floor for the Yellow Jackets this season, whether it be, position or game style, gameplay? What is it going to be for this Yellow Jacket team?
I think that the team's going to take a little bit of a page out of Tim Fusina's book. Joe was talking about it during the men's section, that ever since he's got here, the men's team has really been able to slow down the pace of play a little bit and be able to cut those points per game. The opponent is scoring very, very rapidly, but the women's team last year was giving up quite a few points, one of the bottom teams in the PAC as far as points per game allowed. So if they can kind of slow it down a little bit and then be able to get those hot streaks like I was talking about before behind a three-point arc and maybe push it inside to some of the younger, bigger players, then I think that they have a shot to compete.
Thank you very much, Brock, for your analysis. Thank you for tuning in to Jacket Sports Weekly. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. We want to say thank you. Also, happy Halloween, but don't eat too much candy. We'll see you next time.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.